December 7th, 1971, Westfield, New Jersey. For exactly 1 month, the mansion at 431 Hillside Avenue has been dark, silent, waiting. The neighbors notice the newspapers piling up, the mail overflowing from the box. But in 1971, in a town like Westfield, you minded your own business. You gave people space. You trusted that everything was fine, but everything was not fine. When the police finally broke through the heavy wooden door of the Victorian mansion the neighbors called Breeze Knoll, they found something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. In the ballroom, an ornate 40-foot-long room with Tiffany stained glass ceilings, 4 bodies lay in perfect rows on sleeping bags, covered with blankets, arranged like they were peacefully sleeping. Helen List, 46 years old, Patricia, 16, John Jr., 15, Frederick, 13, and upstairs, in a third-floor apartment, one more, Alma List, 84, 5 members of one family, executed by someone who was supposed to protect them, and that someone, he had vanished into thin air. For the next 18 years, he would become a ghost, America's most wanted invisible man. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button if you stand against cowards who hurt their families, because this story reveals the deadliest kind of evil, the kind that hides behind a smile and a suit. Only people who sympathize with family destroyers will skip this. Don't be one of them. Let me take you back to that moment. December 7th, 4:30 p.m. Edward Iliano didn't want to be nosy. He really didn't. But he'd seen the List kids waiting at the bus stop every morning for years. Patricia with her drama club scripts, John Jr. with his football, little Frederick with his backpack covered in patches. For a month now, nothing. No lights in the windows at night, no car in the driveway, no movement at all. The final straw, the chandeliers. Through the towering windows of Breeze Knoll, you could always see those beautiful crystal chandeliers glowing warm and golden. One by one, over the past week, they'd burned out. Now the mansion sat in complete darkness. Something was wrong. Ed called the police. Officer George Zalesnik arrived first, followed by Chief James Moran. They knocked. No answer. They circled the mansion, all 19 rooms of Victorian grandeur slowly rotting from the inside. Through a window, Chief Moran saw something that made his blood run cold. Shapes. On the floor, covered in blankets. They broke down the door. The smell hit them first. Even in the freezing cold, and it was freezing, the thermostat had been turned down to 50 degrees, there was that unmistakable odor. Sweet. Sickening. Death. Classical music was playing, softly on a radio that had been running for weeks. In the ballroom they found them. 4 bodies laid out with methodical precision. Helen List, the mother, positioned at the far end. Then Patricia, then John Jr., then Frederick, each on their own sleeping bag, each covered with a blanket pulled up to their chin, each with a single bullet hole. Well, not Patricia. She had 10. The mother had been shot once behind the ear while drinking her morning coffee. Clean, efficient. The boys had each been shot once, execution style. But Patricia? 10 bullets, defensive wounds on her hands. She'd seen it coming. She'd fought back. And whoever did this had kept shooting until she stopped moving. Upstairs in the 3rd-floor attic apartment, they found Alma, the grandmother, shot in the face, left in a pool of dried blood because she'd been too heavy to drag downstairs with the others. 5 people, 1 family, murdered in their own home. And then the police found the letter. 5 pages, handwritten in neat, methodical script, addressed to the family's pastor. It was a confession, not a ransom note. Not a mystery, a full explanation, calm, detailed, almost cheerful in tone, describing exactly what happened and why. By the time you read this, I will be far away. My family is dead, I killed them. But I didn't murder them, I saved them. The letter went on and on, listing financial problems like a grocery list, mortgage 3 months overdue, bank account $200,000 in debt. Lost his job months ago but too ashamed to tell anyone. And then the pivot. I couldn't let them suffer the humiliation of poverty. I couldn't let them lose their faith. So I sent them all to heaven before Satan could claim them. He'd signed it. John Emil List, the father, the husband, the Sunday school teacher, the man everyone in Westfield, New Jersey called the most devoted family man they'd ever known. He had executed his entire family, methodically, one by one, over the course of 7 hours. And then he disappeared. The police walked through Breeze Knoll in stunned silence. This wasn't a crime of passion, this was calculated. John List had turned the thermostat down to preserve the bodies, buying himself time before discovery. He'd left the classical music playing on the radio so neighbors would think someone was home. He'd written letters to the children's schools saying they were going to North Carolina to care for a sick relative, giving himself weeks of head start. He'd canceled the milk delivery, stopped the newspaper, notified the post office to hold the mail. And then there was the photographs. Every single family photo in the house, and there were dozens, had been meticulously altered. With scissors, John List had cut his own face out of every picture, every wedding photo, every holiday card, every family portrait. He'd erased himself. Chief Moran stood in that dark, freezing ballroom, looking at 4 bodies that had been lying there for a month, and realized something terrifying. This man had been planning this for a long time. He'd thought of everything, and he was smart enough, careful enough, and cold enough to get away with it. The initial theory, murder-suicide, died the moment they realized John was missing. This was something worse. This was a man who killed his entire family, arranged them like dolls, wrote a letter explaining why he was righteous for doing it, and then walked away to start a new life. As the coroner's van pulled away from 431 Hillside Avenue that night, removing 5 body bags from the home that was supposed to protect them, one question consumed every detective, every neighbor, every person who would hear this story. How do you catch a ghost? John Emil List had no criminal record, no history of violence, no prior arrests. He was a decorated World War II veteran, a church elder, a Boy Scout leader, a man who wore a suit and tie even on Saturdays. He was the perfect family man, until the moment he decided his family would be more perfect dead. And for the next 18 years, he would prove that you can hide in plain sight, even after committing one of the most horrific family annihilations in American history. The manhunt was about to begin, but John List had already thought of that too. Who was John List before the murders? What turned a Sunday school teacher into a family annihilator? Picture this. Tree-lined streets where every lawn is manicured to perfection. Church bells on Sunday mornings. Neighbors who wave from their porches, kids riding bikes until the streetlights come on. The kind of town where everyone knows everyone and nothing bad ever happens. The kind of town where a family like the Lists fit in perfectly. At the top of Hillside Avenue stood their home, Breeze Knoll, a Victorian mansion so grand, so imposing that it dominated the entire street. 19 rooms, Tiffany stained glass skylights, ballrooms and servants' quarters and wraparound porches. Built in 1882, it was a piece of living history, and inside lived what everyone believed was the model American family. The father who never missed church, the devoted mother, 3 bright, beautiful children, the sweet grandmother who baked strudel for the neighbors. From the outside, they had everything. But houses, especially big, beautiful houses, are very good at hiding secrets. Let's start with him, the man who would destroy everything. John Emil List was 46 years old in 1971, Tall, thin, with thick-rimmed glasses and a receding hairline he tried to hide with a careful comb-over. He had a weak chin, something he was deeply self-conscious about, and pale, almost translucent skin that suggested he didn't spend much time outdoors. He wore a suit and tie every single day, even on Saturdays, even to mow the lawn. Ask anyone in Westfield about John List and you'd hear the same things. Devoted family man, pillar of the community, man of God. He taught Sunday school at the Redeemer Lutheran Church. He'd been elected to the church council. He organized Boy Scout camping trips. He never drank, never smoked, never swore. He'd served in World War II, though he rarely talked about it, and had earned the rank of first lieutenant. He was an accountant by trade. Numbers, order, precision. These were the things that made sense to John List. Everything in its place, everything calculated, everything controlled. But here's what the neighbors didn't see. John List was a man absolutely terrified of failure. His father had been a cold, rigid German immigrant who measured success in dollars and status. His mother, Alma, was domineering and judgmental, constantly comparing John to other men, other families, other lives he wasn't living. John grew up believing that a man's worth was tied to his ability to provide, to maintain appearances, to never ever show weakness, and by 1971, John List was failing at all of it. 6 months earlier, he'd been fired from his job at a bank in Jersey City. He'd made a mistake, a significant one involving a loan approval, and they'd let him go quietly. No scandal, just gone. He never told his family. Every morning at 7:30 a.m., John would put on his suit, grab his briefcase, kiss Helen goodbye, and leave for work. But he wasn't going to work. He was going to the train station, sitting on a bench, reading newspapers, pretending. For 8 hours a day, he pretended to have a job he'd lost half a year ago. Because admitting failure, that was unthinkable, that was death. So instead, he chose actual death. Helen List was 46 years old, soft-spoken, elegant, with dark hair she wore in the style of the day, pinned up, proper, perfect. She'd been beautiful once. Everyone said so. The pastor's daughter who caught John's eye after the war. They married in 1951, John's first marriage, Helen's second. That second marriage part, that mattered. Helen had been married before, briefly, to a man who'd given her syphilis. In 1971, this wasn't something you talked about, this was shameful. The disease had been treated, but it left her with chronic health problems, headaches, fatigue, neurological issues that came and went, and it left John with a deep, unspoken resentment. By 1971, Helen's health was deteriorating. She had episodes, moments where she'd seem confused, distant, not quite herself. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Other days she'd be fine, playing piano in the parlor, making dinner, being the perfect housewife. But John saw her illness as weakness, as evidence of her sin coming back to haunt her. Here's the truth. Helen List loved her children. She loved her life. She loved playing piano and tending her garden and watching her kids grow up. She didn't want to be freed, she wanted to be helped. But John List didn't ask what she wanted. Patricia List, 16 years old. Everyone called her Patty. She was a junior at Westfield High School and she was vibrant. Drama club star. She'd played Liesel in the school's production of The Sound of Music the previous year and brought the house down. She dreamed of being an actress, Broadway maybe, or Hollywood. She'd plaster her bedroom walls with photos of Audrey Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor practicing monologues in the mirror. Patty was at that age where she was becoming her own person, and that terrified John. She'd started dating. There was an older boy, 18, maybe 19, who would pick her up in his car. John hated this, hated that he was losing control, hated that his daughter was becoming a woman with her own desires, her own dreams that didn't fit into his rigid vision of what a good Lutheran girl should be. He told her the theater was sinful, that acting was vanity, that she needed to focus on finding a good Christian husband and starting a family. Patty had started pushing back. In John's mind, she was losing her soul. John Frederick List Jr., 15 years old, the firstborn son, the one who carried his father's name. John Jr. was a good kid, honor roll student, played football. Tall like his father, but stronger, more athletic, more confident. He had friends. He had a girlfriend. He had a future. He idolized his father. He'd follow John Sr. around the house, asking about his war stories, about accounting, about how to be a man. He wanted to make his father proud. That makes what happened to him even worse. Because when John Jr. came home from school on November 9th, 1971, and saw his father standing in the hallway with a gun, he didn't run. He begged, "I'm not ready to die, Dad, please." And John List shot him anyway. Frederick List, 13 years old, Freddie, the baby of the family, quiet, sensitive, sweet. He loved his dog, Tinker. He collected stamps. He'd sit in his room for hours working on model airplanes, tongue poking out in concentration. He was a mama's boy, close with Helen in a way that made John uncomfortable. Too soft, John thought, not tough enough. On November 9th, Freddie was playing outside after school. He had no idea that his mother, grandmother, and sister were already dead inside the house. John called him in. "Come here, buddy, I need to talk to you." Freddie trusted his father completely. He died still trusting him. Now let me tell you about the woman whose story should haunt every grandparent watching this. 84 years old, born in Germany in 1887. She'd survived 2 world wars, crossed an ocean to build a new life, lived through the Depression, and raised her son alone after her husband died. She was tough, practical, strong-willed, the kind of immigrant grandmother who could stretch a dollar, bake from scratch, and keep a household running through sheer force of will. She'd given up her independence to move into that 3rd-floor apartment. She wanted to be close to her son, close to her grandchildren. She baked them cookies, helped with their homework. She was there, always there, because that's what grandmothers do. But Alma had opinions, and she wasn't shy about sharing them. She criticized John's financial decisions, questioned why Helen looked so tired, worried about Patty's rebelliousness. She saw the cracks in the perfect facade, and she spoke up. Every comment was a knife in John's ego. Think about this. Alma List survived the devastation of 2 world wars. She survived losing her husband. She survived the Great Depression. She crossed an ocean for a better life. She survived all of that, only to be murdered by her own son because she hurt his pride. In his confession letter, he wrote about Alma almost casually. "Mother was getting too involved in our lives. She was causing stress." So he shot her in the face. The woman who'd raised him, who'd sacrificed everything to give him opportunities, who'd moved in to help with the children, he killed her because she made him feel like a failure. If you have grandparents or if you are a grandparent, think about Alma List. Think about giving your whole life to family only to be destroyed by the person you sacrificed everything for. Comment, "Alma deserved better if this breaks your heart like it breaks mine." By November 1971, the perfect family was fracturing. John had lost his job and was hiding it. Every day was a performance, suit, briefcase, fake smile. Meanwhile, the bills piled up. The mortgage on Breeze Knoll, 3 months overdue. The bank was sending foreclosure notices. John would intercept the mail before Helen could see them, stuffing the envelopes into his briefcase. Their bank account, negative. Savings, depleted. John had taken out loans against Helen's mother's inheritance, against the house, against everything. He was $200,000 in debt. the equivalent of about 1.5 million today. But he couldn't tell anyone, couldn't ask for help, couldn't admit that he, John Emil List, decorated war veteran and church elder and pillar of the community, had failed. Instead, he spiraled into his twisted theology. He'd sit in church on Sundays and listen to sermons about salvation, about heaven, about protecting your family's souls from Satan. And an idea began to form. What if losing everything, the house, the status, the appearances, what if that was the real danger? Not to him, but to his family's eternal souls. What if poverty would lead them astray? What if Patty's rebellion was the beginning of damnation? What if John Jr. would lose his faith when he found out his father was a failure? In John's mind, there was only one solution. Send them to heaven now, before they could be corrupted, before they could sin, before they could lose their salvation. He'd said it to friends at church, offhandedly, in that way people sometimes do. If anything ever happens to my family, I'll make sure they all go to heaven together. People thought he was being pious. He was planning a massacre, November 8th, 1971, a Monday night, normal, quiet. Helen made pot roast for dinner. The family ate together at the dining room table, something John insisted on. Everyone present, everyone together. Patty talked about an upcoming drama club rehearsal. John Jr. mentioned a football game on Friday. Freddie asked if he could get a new model airplane kit. Helen smiled. Alma ate in her apartment upstairs but came down for dessert. Apple pie she'd baked that afternoon. John sat at the head of the table and watched them. His family laughing, talking, living. And he'd already decided they would all be dead in less than 12 hours. After dinner, the kids did homework. John helped Freddie with math, patient, kind, the good father. He kissed each of them goodnight. Sleep well. Love you, Dad. Love you too, buddy. He'd already bought the guns, 2 of them, a 9mm Luger from his war collection and a .22 revolver. They were hidden in his closet, loaded and ready. He'd already written the confession letter in draft form, pages and pages of justification. He'd already planned the route out of town, the new identity, the escape. That night, John List went to bed next to his wife of 20 years, and when he woke up, he started killing. November 9th, 1971, a Tuesday. Dawn breaks over Westfield, New Jersey. Frost on the windows, the kind of cold, crisp morning where you can see your breath. Inside Breeze Knoll, the List family begins their day like any other. Helen is in the kitchen by 7 a.m. making breakfast. Coffee percolating, toast in the oven, the radio playing softly. Classical music, always classical music. Upstairs, the kids are getting ready for school. Patty fighting with her hair in the bathroom mirror. John Jr. looking for his football cleats. Freddie packing his book bag, moving slower than his siblings, still half asleep. John List comes downstairs in his suit and tie, briefcase in hand. He kisses Helen on the cheek, a routine gesture, mechanical, the same as every morning. "Have a good day," she says. He doesn't respond. The children come down one by one, grab toast, gulp orange juice, the usual chaos of teenagers trying to get out the door on time. John watches them, studies them. These are the last moments they'll be alive, and they have no idea. Patty leaves first. She catches a ride with a friend. "Bye, Daddy." She's out the door, drama scripts under her arm, laughing about something with her friend. John Jr. and Freddie leave together, walking to the bus stop at the end of Hillside Avenue. John Sr. stands at the window and watches them go. John Jr.'s football jacket, Freddie's backpack bouncing on his shoulders, his sons. He's going to kill them both in less than 8 hours. But first, Helen. By 9 a.m., the house is quiet now. Just John and Helen. Alma is still upstairs in her third-floor apartment. She sleeps late these days, her age catching up with her. Helen is in the kitchen cleaning up from breakfast. She's wearing a simple house dress, her hair still in curlers. She pours herself a second cup of coffee and sits at the table with the newspaper. John goes upstairs to his bedroom, opens the closet, takes out the 9mm Luger, a relic from World War II kept pristine, oiled, loaded. He checks the chamber, slides around into position. The mechanical click echoes in the empty room. Then he walks back downstairs. Helen doesn't hear him approach. She's reading the paper, sipping her coffee, probably thinking about what to make for dinner. John List steps into the kitchen doorway, raises the gun, points it at the back of his wife's head. Helen doesn't turn around, doesn't see it coming, doesn't get a chance to ask why, or beg, or scream, or run. One shot, behind the left ear. The coffee cup falls from her hand and shatters on the linoleum floor. Helen slumps forward, her face hitting the table, then sliding off to the floor. Blood pools beneath her head, spreading slowly across the kitchen tiles. John stands there for a moment, watching, making sure she's dead. No emotion on his face, just calculation. Then he grabs her by the ankles and drags her body through the kitchen, down the hallway, into the ballroom. Her blood leaves a dark red trail across the hardwood floors. He positions Helen carefully on a sleeping bag he'd laid out the night before, on her back, arms at her sides. He covers her with a blanket, pulling it up to her chin, like she's sleeping. 1 down, 4 to go. By 9:30 a.m., John hears movement from upstairs. His mother is awake. He climbs the stairs to the third-floor apartment, Alma's private space. She's in her small kitchen making herself breakfast, eggs and toast, the smell of butter in the pan. "John, is that you?" "Yes, Mother." She turns to look at him and sees the gun. For a split second, there's confusion on her face, then recognition, then terror. "John, what are you—" He shoots her in the face. At close range, the bullet destroys her left eye and cheekbone, the back of her skull exploding against the kitchen cabinet behind her. Alma List, 84 years old, drops to the floor in a heap. The woman who baked strudel for the neighborhood, who survived wars and oceans and decades of hardship, who crossed the Atlantic for a better life, murdered by her own son because she criticized him. John tries to drag her toward the stairs but can't manage it. She's too heavy. After several minutes of struggling, he gives up. He leaves her there, in her apartment, in a spreading pool of blood, 2 down, 3 to go. For the next 2.5 hours, John List sits in his house with 2 dead bodies and waits for his children to come home. He makes himself lunch, a sandwich, some fruit. He eats methodically, he reads his Bible, specifically passages about salvation, about Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac. He's convinced this is God's plan. The clock ticks, noon. The front door opens. "Mom, I'm home." Patricia is home. Patty comes home for lunch sometimes, not every day, but often enough. The school is close and she likes to check in, grab something to eat. "Mom?" She walks toward the kitchen, probably expecting to find Helen at the stove. John is waiting in the hallway. She sees him, sees the gun. Her eyes go wide. "Daddy?" This is the moment she understands, the moment she realizes her father who taught her to ride a bike, who came to every play, who called her his little star, is about to kill her. She runs. John List fires. The first shot hits her in the shoulder. She screams, a sound that echoes through the empty mansion, and stumbles into the parlor. John follows her, methodical, not rushing. Patricia is trying to get to the front door, but she's wounded, bleeding, panicking. She trips over the carpet and falls. John stands over her. She holds up her hands. "Daddy, please, please don't." He fires again, and again, and again. Patricia fights. She tries to crawl away. She tries to protect herself with her hands. The defensive wounds will be obvious to investigators later, but John keeps shooting. 10 bullets in total. 10 times he pulled the trigger on his 16-year-old daughter. When Patricia finally stops moving, blood spreading across the Persian rug beneath her, John reloads his gun. Then he drags her body to the ballroom and positions her on a sleeping bag next to Helen. Mother and daughter. Side by side, 3 down, 2 to go. By 3:15 p.m., the front door opens again. "Dad, you home?" John Jr. sounds surprised. His father is never home in the afternoon. He should be at work. "In here, son." John Jr. walks toward his father's voice. He turns the corner and sees the gun, sees the blood trail on the floor, sees his father's face. Cold, expressionless, nothing. "Dad, what?" Understanding hits him. And then he said the words that would haunt investigators for years. "I'm not ready to die, Dad, please." John List shot his firstborn son in the chest. John Jr. fell backward, gasping, bleeding, looking up at his father with eyes full of confusion and betrayal and terror. John List shot him again, in the face this time, to make sure. Then he dragged his son's body to the ballroom and laid him next to his sister. 4 down, 1 to go. By 4 p.m., Freddie is outside playing when he gets home from school. It's cold, but he doesn't care. He's throwing a ball for Tinker, the family dog, laughing as the dog barks and jumps. John watches from the window. His youngest son, 13 years old. Still a child, really. Still innocent. He opens the door. "Freddie, come inside, buddy. I need to talk to you." Freddie comes running, happy to see his dad home early. Tinker follows, tail wagging. "Go on, Tinker. Outside." The dog obeys and John closes the door. Freddie is standing in the hallway, out of breath, cheeks flushed from the cold. "What's up, Dad?" "Come here, son." John puts his hand on Freddie's shoulder, a gentle touch, almost loving. "Everything's going to be okay." Those were the last words Frederick List ever heard. One shot, through the heart. Freddie died instantly. He didn't suffer, not like Patricia, didn't beg, not like John Jr. He just ended. John List caught his son's body as it fell, lowered him gently to the floor, then dragged him to the ballroom with the others. Helen, Patricia, John Jr., Frederick. 4 bodies in a perfect row. He covered Frederick with the last blanket, stepped back, looked at his work. "You're all in heaven now," he said quietly. "Safe from sin, safe from shame." Then he went upstairs and washed the blood off his hands. For the next several hours, John List moved through his house like a man completing a checklist. He finished the confession letter. 5 pages of careful explanation. Why he did it, how he did it, what he hoped would happen to their souls. He typed letters to the children's schools. He called the post office. He turned the thermostat down to 50 degrees. He scrubbed blood from the floors everywhere except the ballroom. That was hopeless. And then the photographs. He went through the house with his scissors and cut his face from every family photo. Birthday parties, graduations, family gatherings, snip, snip, snip. Until John List no longer existed in the visual history of his family. He turned on the radio in the ballroom, classical music, soft and peaceful. He set lights on timers throughout the house. Then he put on his coat, picked up his briefcase, and walked out the front door. It was 9 p.m., exactly 12 hours since he'd shot Helen in the kitchen. John List disappeared into the November night. If you're still watching this and you're disgusted by John List's cowardice, by the fact that he chose murder over asking for help, then share this video. Only people who think pride matters more than family won't share it. Don't be like John List. For 30 days, Breeze Knoll sat silent. The timers clicked on and off, lights glowing in windows, making everything look normal. The classical music played until the radio station changed programming. Inside, 5 bodies lay in the dark. Helen, Alma, Patricia, John Jr., Frederick. Their decomposition slowed by the cold, just as John had planned. Outside, life went on, until December 7th, exactly 1 month later, when someone finally looked through the window. When the police walked into that ballroom, they knew immediately. This was no ordinary murder. The confession letter revealed everything. The sleeping bags, the blankets, the thermostat, the cutout photographs. John List had planned this for months. And now he had a month's head start. Within hours, the FBI took over the case. And many theories sprang up. Maybe he killed his family to collect insurance, then faked his own death. But the policies totaled only $50,000. Not nearly enough. Dead end. Or maybe he killed himself somewhere remote. They searched woods, lakes, abandoned buildings for 3 months. No body, no evidence. Dead end. Or maybe he fled to Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, where fugitives disappeared. Interpol was contacted. Agents flew to São Paulo, Buenos Aires. Every lead turned out to be someone else. Dead end. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. John List hadn't fled to some exotic location. He'd changed his name, moved to a nearby state, and lived a completely normal life for 18 years. His car was found at JFK Airport, a diversion. He'd probably taken a bus to Denver, paid cash, used a fake name. Robert Peter Clark. Bob, for short. A widower whose wife died in a car accident, no children. Just a quiet accountant looking for a fresh start. He got a job at H&R Block, rented a small apartment, and every Sunday he went to church. Because even after murdering his family, John List fully intended to keep worshiping God. The FBI chased hundreds of leads, thousands of tips, every sighting from California to Maine. All false. By 1974, the active manhunt was scaled back. The case started to go cold. John List had become a ghost. Meanwhile, Westfield, New Jersey was transformed. Before November 9, 1971, it was the kind of place where neighbors trusted each other, where children walked to school alone, where people left their doors unlocked. After, everything changed. How could we not have known? People asked. Parents held their children closer. Doors that stayed unlocked for decades now had deadbolts and chains. The question haunted everyone. Was he ever really who we thought he was? At Redeemer Lutheran Church, attendance dropped. Some families left entirely. They couldn't sit in the same pews where John List once taught Sunday school. In 1972, Breeze Knoll burned to the ground in a mysterious fire. Arson was suspected but never proven. The empty lot became a local landmark, a reminder of horror. And John Emil List? He was living in Denver, then Virginia, working, going to church, teaching Sunday school. In 1985, 14 years after the murders, he remarried. His new wife, Dolores, was a divorced woman he met at church. Sweet-natured, devoted, lonely. He told her his wife died in a car accident years ago, that he'd never remarried because the pain was too great. She believed him completely. For 4 years, Dolores Miller Clark lived with John List. She knew him as Bob, her quiet, dependable husband. She had absolutely no idea she'd married a man who murdered his first wife and 3 children. February 7, 1988. A new television show premieres on Fox, America's Most Wanted, hosted by John Walsh. The concept is simple: profile unsolved crimes and fugitives. Show their faces, tell their stories. Ask America to help catch them. Within days of the first episode, a suspect is captured. A viewer recognized him and called the FBI. The show works. In early 1989, producers are looking for a big case, something that will prove the show's value. FBI Special Agent Frank Maranza, who's been obsessed with the List case for 18 years, suggests John List. The producers love it, but there's a problem. All the photographs of John List are from 1971. He'd be 63 years old now. People age, they change. That's when someone suggests Frank Bender. Frank Bender is a Philadelphia-based forensic sculptor with an almost supernatural gift. He creates three-dimensional busts of fugitives, aging their faces forward. He's given the List file, photos from 1971, physical description, psychological profile. Bender studies everything. But he keeps coming back to one detail. List hated his weak chin. Multiple witnesses mentioned it. That's the key, Bender says. If List changed anything about himself, he'd fix that chin. It's a hunch, not science, just intuition. Bender creates the bust. He ages List's features forward, adds a stronger chin, subtle but noticeable. Thick-rimmed glasses, gray hair. When he finishes, he's certain. That's what John List looks like now. May 21st, 1989. America's Most Wanted airs the segment. They show photos of Breeze Knoll, photos of the victims, crime scene details, the confession letter, and then Frank Bender's bust. The camera rotates around it slowly, shows every angle. If you've seen this man, John Walsh says, call our hotline immediately. In Richmond, Virginia, a woman starts screaming. Dolores Clark is sitting on her couch next to her husband, Bob. They've just come home from evening church service. They're watching TV before bed. When the bust appears on screen, Dolores gasps. Her hand flies to her mouth. She turns to look at her husband, then back at the TV, then back at Bob. "Oh my God," she whispers. "Bob, that looks exactly like you." Bob gives a nervous laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, Dolores." "No, Bob, look, that's your face." Lots of people look similar, especially men my age. But Dolores can't look away. The bust. Then Bob. Then the bust again. It's not just similar. It's identical. The same thin face, the same glasses. Even the jaw. Bob had mentioned once that he'd had minor dental surgery in the early 70s. What if it wasn't dental surgery? What if it was plastic surgery on his chin? "Bob," her voice is shaking. "Bob, where did you say you were from?" "We've talked about this, dear, back east." But she's remembering other things now. Things that never quite added up. Bob never talked about his past, no photos from before 1971, his obsession with money. The way he watched crime shows so intently. The segment continues. Details about John List, accountant, Lutheran, lived in New Jersey, military veteran, methodical, controlling personality. Bob is all of those things. "What was your first wife's name, Bob?" Silence. "Bob, what was your first wife's name?" He's staring at the television, not blinking. "Barbara," he finally says. But he hesitated. For 2 weeks, Dolores lives in silent hell. She can't stop thinking about the bust, about all the little things that never made sense. She watches Bob, studies him, looks for signs. But he's the same as always. Quiet, routine, work, church, dinner at 6 p.m. until she can't take it anymore. June 1st, 1989. Dolores waits until Bob goes to work. Then she picks up the phone. She dials 1-800-CRIME-TV. "I think John List is living in Richmond, Virginia," she says quietly. "Under the name Robert Clark. He's my husband." Within hours, the FBI compares Bob Clark's fingerprints to John List's military records. Perfect match. After 18 years. After hundreds of false leads, they've got him. June 2nd, 1989. 6:47 a.m. FBI agents surround a modest house in Richmond. Bob Clark answers the door in his bathrobe and reading glasses. "Are you John List?" Moment of silence. "You got me." Just like that. No fight, no denial. The ghost has become flesh. After 18 years of running, 18 years of hiding, 18 years of pretending, John List is finally caught. Comment: "Cowards always get caught." If you believe no one can run from justice forever, let's flood the comments with this message. Show that we don't sympathize with family destroyers like John List. April 12, 1990. Union County Courthouse, Elizabeth, New Jersey. Nearly 19 years after the murders, John Emil List finally faces trial. The courtroom is packed, media from across the country. Family members of the victims in the front row. They all stare at John List with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. At the defendant's table sits John List. He's 64 years old now. Wearing a suit and tie, of course. He looks like someone's grandfather, not a monster. Never a monster on the outside. Prosecutor Eleanor Clark's opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a mystery. The defendant wrote a confession letter describing exactly what he did. He shot his wife in the back of the head. He shot his 84-year-old mother in the face. He waited for his children to come home from school and shot them one by one. His 16-year-old daughter fought back. So he shot her 10 times. A juror gasps. After he murdered his entire family, he arranged their bodies on sleeping bags. He covered them with blankets. He turned down the thermostat to slow decomposition. He cut his face out of every family photograph. And he walked away. She pauses. For 18 years, he lived freely. He moved to Colorado, then Virginia. He got a job. He went to church every Sunday. He remarried. He taught Sunday school to other people's children while his own children rotted in their graves. The defense will tell you John List was insane, but I will prove that he knew exactly what he was doing, that he planned these murders for months, that he executed them methodically, and that he ran away and successfully hid for 18 years. John List didn't have a mental break. He had a choice. And he chose to murder 5 innocent people rather than ask for help, rather than admit failure, rather than lose his pride. Over 2 weeks, methodical, the prosecution presents forensic testimony about the murders, the confession letter read in full, crime scene photographs, witness testimony from neighbors, church members, teachers. Patricia's drama teacher testifies through tears. Patty was so talented, so full of life. She wanted to be an actress, but her father forbade it, said the theater was sinful. She once said, "Dad sees everything as a test from God, and I keep failing." John Jr.'s football coach. John Jr. was a great kid. He idolized his father. That boy came home from school and his father shot him while he begged for his life. Dolores Clark, now divorced. I met Bob Clark at church in 1985. He seemed kind, quiet. He told me his wife died in a car accident. I never suspected. He was convincing. When I saw him on America's Most Wanted, I knew immediately. That was my husband. Then the defense makes a fatal mistake. They put John List on the stand. John List's testimony. The prosecution's cross-examination destroys him. "Mr. List, did your children want to die?" "No, but did you ask them?" "They wouldn't have understood." "So you played God?" "I was their father. When asked if he feels remorse, I did what I had to do for their souls." The jury is visibly disturbed. Several are crying. John List shows no tears, no emotion, just cold explanation. April 12, 1990. The verdict. The jury deliberates 8 hours. In the matter of the state of New Jersey versus John Emil List, Count 1, the murder of Helen List, guilty of first-degree murder. Count 2, the murder of Alma List, guilty of first-degree murder. Count 3, the murder of Patricia List, guilty of first-degree murder. Count 4, the murder of John Frederick List, Jr., guilty of first-degree murder. Count 5, the murder of Frederick List, guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupts. Applause, crying, shouting. John List sits perfectly still, no expression. He simply nods slightly. 3 weeks later, on the sentencing day, Helen's sister, Jean Seifert, speaks through tears. Helen was the kindest person I ever knew. John List took her from us, shot her in the back of the head while she drank her morning coffee. You didn't save her, John. You murdered her. You took a beautiful, loving woman and you destroyed her. And then you went on living. You got married again. You celebrated holidays. Helen has been in the ground for 19 years. She never saw her children grow up because you killed them. Patricia's best friend. Patty was my best friend. We were going to move to New York after graduation. She was going to audition for Broadway. She had talent, real talent. Patty fought back. The evidence showed that. She ran from her father. She tried to defend herself, and he shot her 10 times, 10 times. She was 16 years old. She never got to graduate high school. Never got to fall in love, get married, have children, all because her father valued his pride more than her life. John List's statement. He speaks for 45 minutes. Rambling, self-pitying, delusional. Your Honor, everything I did out of love for my family. I was facing financial ruin. My children would have grown up in poverty. Helen was sick. Patricia was rebelling. I couldn't let Satan claim their souls. I gave them heaven. I sent them to a place where they'll never suffer. I know the world sees me as a monster, but I'm not. I'm a father who made an impossible choice. I did what I believed God wanted me to do. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused, but I'm not sorry for what I did, because I saved them. The courtroom is silent with shock and rage. Judge William Leigh Wertheimer. Mr. List, I have presided over many trials. I have heard many defendants express remorse, take responsibility, beg for forgiveness. You have done none of those things. Instead, you have attempted to justify the unjustifiable. You have claimed that murdering 5 people, including your own children, was an act of love. It was cowardice. It was narcissism. It was evil. You murdered your wife because you were ashamed. You murdered your mother because she criticized you. You murdered your daughter because she dared to have her own dreams. You murdered your sons because they would have seen you fail. And then you ran away. You created a false identity. You lived freely for 18 years while your family rotted in their graves. You have shown no remorse, no insight, no recognition of the magnitude of your crimes. Mr. List, if there is a heaven, your family is there, and you will never see them again. On each count of murder, I sentence you to life in prison. These sentences are to be served consecutively. You are ineligible for parole. You will die in prison, Mr. List. The courtroom erupts in applause and tears. John List sways slightly. Can I appeal? The courtroom gasps at his audacity. Judge Wertheimer, that is your right, but I can tell you now, you will lose. As bailiffs approach, John List finally breaks. This is persecution, religious persecution. I did what God commanded. I saved my family's souls. You don't understand. Do I need to bind and gag you, Mr. List? John List stops. The fight drains out of him. No, Your Honor. They lead him away, back to his cell, to begin 5 consecutive life sentences. He doesn't look back. For the next 18 years, almost the same amount of time he spent on the run. John List serves his sentence. New Jersey State Prison, Trenton. Cell Block D, protective custody. 6 by 8 foot cell, concrete walls, steel door. This is where he will die. He's a model prisoner. Quiet, compliant, never causes trouble. But other inmates know what he did. Child killers don't fare well in prison. He's kept separate. 23 hours a day in his cell. 1 hour for exercise, no church services, no Sunday school, no fellowship, just silence and concrete and time. But John List files appeal after appeal. All denied. New Jersey Superior Court denied. New Jersey Supreme Court denied. Federal District Court denied. U.S. Supreme Court refuses to hear the case. All 5 convictions upheld permanently. As for Dolores Clark, after the divorce, she moved to Colorado to be near her daughter. Lives quietly. In a rare 1995 interview, I wake up every day and remember that I shared a bed with a man who murdered his family. I cooked dinner for him. I introduced him to my grandchildren. I loved him. How do you live with that? She never remarries. Dies of cancer in 2008. On March 23, 2008, John Emil List dies in the prison medical ward. Complications from pneumonia. Age 82. He has been in prison for 17 years, 9 months, and 20 days. No family claims his body. He is cremated. His ashes scattered in an unmarked location. No grave, no headstone, no memorial. He is erased from the earth as thoroughly as he tried to erase himself from his family photos. Before his death, he writes one final letter. I have no regrets. I did what any faithful father would do. I protected my family the only way I could. I die with a clear conscience, knowing that I will soon be reunited with my family in paradise. Even facing death, John List cannot accept reality. He dies believing he was right. In Westfield, New Jersey, the lot where Breeze Knoll once stood remained empty for decades. In 2003, a developer finally built a new house there. A family moved in. We're making new memories, the mother says, happy memories. But every November 9th, someone leaves flowers on the curb. For Helen, for Alma, for Patricia, for John Jr., for Frederick. What do we learn? 1. Perfection is often a mask. The perfect family man, the devoted church member, the model citizen. John List was all of these things on the surface. Underneath, a narcissist who valued pride over lives. Be wary of people who seem too perfect, who never admit mistakes, who never ask for help. 2. Financial shame is never worth a life. John List murdered 5 people rather than admit he lost his job. He valued his reputation more than his family's lives. Money problems are solvable. Embarrassment is temporary. Pride is not worth murder. For everyone watching who's over 65, you've lived long enough to see financial struggles. You've survived recessions, job losses, maybe even bankruptcy, and you're still here. You survived because you asked for help, because you humbled yourself, because you understood that pride is worth nothing compared to family. 3. Religious belief can be twisted. John List used theology to justify murder. I was saving their souls. But this wasn't faith. This was narcissism wrapped in scripture. Religion should promote love, compassion, and humility. When it's used to justify harm, it's been corrupted. 4. Evil doesn't always look evil. John List wasn't a monster with fangs and claws. He was a quiet accountant who wore suits and taught Sunday school. Evil often looks normal, boring, unremarkable. Trust your instincts. Pay attention to red flags. 5. The warning signs. If someone in your life shows these signs, pay attention. Rigidity. Everything must be perfect, controlled their way. Isolation. They cut off family who disappoint them. Blame shifting. Nothing is ever their fault. Religious superiority. They use faith as a weapon, not comfort. Financial secrecy. They hide money problems rather than discuss them. Conditional love. Their affection comes with strings attached. The most dangerous people are the ones who would rather destroy everything than admit they need help. If you're struggling, financially, emotionally, mentally, please ask for help. Pride is not worth a life. There is always another option. You are not alone. Failure is not fatal. And your family needs you here, not perfect, just here. Now here's what I need from you. John List murdered 5 innocent people because he was too proud to ask for help. He valued appearances over his family's lives. He was a coward who deserves to be remembered as exactly that, a coward. If you're still watching, you're not like John List. You understand that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You know that family is more important than appearances. You recognize that pride is a prison and humility is freedom, so prove it. Hit that subscribe button if you stand against cowards like John List. If you believe that people who murder their families deserve life in prison with no sympathy, subscribe right now. Only people who sympathize with narcissists and family destroyers will skip this step. Don't be one of them, and comment, "Pride is not worth a life." Below, let's fill this comment section with that message, because somewhere right now someone is struggling, someone is ashamed. Someone is thinking about doing something terrible rather than admit they need help. And maybe, just maybe, they'll see your comment and realize there's another way. That failure is survivable. That bankruptcy is temporary. That asking for help takes more courage than staying silent. That their family needs them alive and imperfect more than they need them dead and honorable. Before you go, I need to tell you about another case. Another family destroyed, another person who was supposed to protect but became the predator instead. Sarah Mitchell, a 35-year-old single mother of 5 children who vanished after leaving work one July evening in 2015. Her children woke up the next morning to find their mother gone. For 8 years, the small town of Willowbrook, Kentucky searched for answers. The ex-boyfriend became the prime suspect. The community was torn apart. Fear spread like wildfire. And when the truth finally came out, when DNA evidence revealed who really killed Sarah, it exposed a betrayal so shocking, so unthinkable, that it shattered everything that town believed about safety and trust. Because the killer wasn't a stranger. The killer was someone sworn to protect. Someone with a badge, just like John List hid behind his suit and his church membership. Sarah Mitchell's killer hid behind authority and respect, and he thought he'd never get caught. He was wrong. Click the video on your screen right now to see how one chance encounter led to a mother's murder, and how DNA evidence finally exposed a devastating betrayal that no one saw coming. But I'm warning you, this case involves police corruption, family secrets, and a killer who used his position to get away with murder for nearly a decade. If you can't handle the truth about how monsters hide behind badges and smiles, don't click. But if you believe every victim deserves their story told, if you believe that no one should be above the law, click that video right now. And if you believe people like John List and Sarah Mitchell's killer deserve life in prison with no mercy, hit that like button before you go. Show me you stand for justice. Show me you stand against cowards. Show me you're not on the side of family destroyers. Remember, Helen List would be 104 years old today. She never got to meet her grandchildren. Alma List survived wars and oceans only to be murdered by her own son. Patricia List never made it to Broadway. Never fell in love. Never had children. John Jr. never became the man he wanted to be. Frederick never grew up, all because one man valued his pride over their breath. Don't let their deaths be meaningless. Share this video. Comment, "Pride is not worth a life." Subscribe to stand against cowards like John List. And then watch the Sarah Mitchell case, because her children deserve justice just like the List family finally got theirs. I'll see you there. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families, and never ever let pride destroy what matters. Never let shame silence you. Ask for help. It could save your life, it could save your family. Thank you for watching. Thank you for standing with the victims. Now go watch what happened to Sarah Mitchell. Her story needs to be told.